There is a reason that Irish people wear green on St. Patrick's Day. You have probably heard of this tradition where Irish people wear green on St. Patrick's Day. It is considered bad luck not to wear something green that day. I am fully Irish, and a couple of years ago I mistakenly forgot. A couple of people pointed it out to me, but I just laughed it off. An old woman approached me and told me to go home and hide before they come looking for me. I just walked away from her, as she was clearly out of her mind. I ended up having a great night, except for the fact that the old woman kept gazing over at me. I stumbled home drunk after the pub kicked us all out and crawled into my bed while praying that my hangover won't be too severe tomorrow. At about 4 in the morning, I was awoken by a thunderous crash downstairs. I reached for the baseball bat that I used as a child and carefully made my way downstairs. I froze on the second to last step as I gazed around my living room. Dozens of tiny little men dressed in green were smashing up the place. I took 2 steps backwards as they noticed my presence. They charged at me, and I didn't have time to defend myself as they overwhelmed me. I collapsed to the floor under their weight and let out a scream of pain as they began to bite into my skin. Their teeth were incredibly sharp, and they easily ripped into my flesh. I managed to get one of my arms free and swung the bat and knocked a few of them off of me. The rest moved back and began circling me, waiting for me to make a mistake. There was blood dripping from their mouths, and I could see pure hatred in their eyes. I tried to stand, but my right leg could barely support me due to all of the bites it had taken. I was starting to get lightheaded, as I had probably lost a lot of blood due to those little monsters. I was trying to decide what to do when they came at me once again. They had grabbed makeshift weapons from around my home and were using them to try and incapacitate me. My right leg gave way as one of them sliced the back of my heel with a knife. I was down on my knees and could barely move due to all of my injuries. They moved back, and one of the leprechauns moved forward and gave me a look of unbridled disdain. He looked me up and down and turned to one of his comrades and muttered something in a strange language. His comrade rushed outside and came back holding a green suit. The suit was then thrown in front of me. The head leprechaun kept pointing at the suit and then at me, and it was obvious he wanted me to put it on. I quickly stripped off what little I was wearing and prepared to put it on. I almost screamed as I tried to put on the trousers, as an agonizing pain went down my leg. I looked inside the trousers and saw dozens of sharp razors hidden inside. I begged the leprechauns to let me go, but they just kept pointing at the suit. I knew I had little choice and began to put the clothing on. There were hidden blades in every piece of clothing, and I couldn't move without getting pierced by one blade or another. My entire body felt like it was on fire as the suit ripped into my flesh in numerous places. After I finally finished putting the suit on, I gazed down to see the suit now looked crimson due to all the blood that was on it. The leprechauns smiled at me before clapping their hands and disappearing. The suit vanished with them, so I stood there half naked with blood covering most of my body. I have learned from that day to always wear green on St. Patrick's Day and urge you to do the same. Leprechaun Ladder. "Mommy, look!" Jerry snapped out of her alcohol-induced sleep, head pounding. "Mommy, the leprechauns came!" Jerry blinked her eyes, open to see a blurry image of her 4-year-old Myra, dangling a green thing in her face. She'd gone out with friends the night before and left Myra with the babysitter, Sam. Now, Suffering from a hangover, she regretted not having Sam stay overnight. Jerry sat up, opened her eyes, and looked at Myra's prize. "What's that, honey?" "The leprechaun ladder I made in school." Myra dangled a piece of yarn connecting 4 construction paper clovers. The clovers had black blotches all over. "The night before St. Patrick's Day, if we leave out the ladder, leprechauns will come and dance on it, leaving behind their footprints. I woke up this morning and they came, see?" "Wow, honey, that's very cool. Can I brush my teeth and then talk more about your ladder?" The little girl complied. Jerry staggered toward the bathroom, the ladder in one hand, cell phone in the other. She laughed and texted Sam, thanking her for setting up the ladder for Myra. She waited for the reply, inspecting the blotches. They looked like tiny black booted footprints with speckles of something else she couldn't determine. Sam texted back, and Jerry's heart dropped. "What are you talking about?" Outside the bathroom door, Myra screamed. My childhood spectral friend. This didn't happen recently, but rather when I was about 7 years old. I'd have to say it was an early morning one day. I happened to see from the living room window a glimpse of a child around my age playing in my front yard. Didn't think anything of it at first. My siblings usually had friends over, so I didn't think anything of it. Now, me being a stupid kid, when I saw another kid, I was like, "Oh, cool, someone to play with." So I ran outside. No sign of the kid. I went back in and went to my room, since there wasn't anybody there. Not even a few minutes later, I see the kid run past my window. Though I noticed something odd about the kid this time. He didn't have any discernible features. He was completely naked and completely featureless. Even his face, it just wasn't there. Again, naturally, being a stupid kid, I bolted outside to catch him and see what he was all about. I saw him round the corner of my house, leading to the backyard, so I sprinted full tilt to try and catch him, but he was gone again. Fast forward a few weeks. I'm looking for my favorite shirt before I left for church. It was a simple red and white striped t-shirt. Hadn't been able to find it for a few days, and I was starting to get sad that I couldn't find it. And there he was again. The boy ran past the window to my room again. This time, he was wearing my shirt, my red and white striped t-shirt. I never saw it again after that. And let me tell you, I was about as livid as a 7-year-old could get. My favorite shirt? Come on. At least take something else like my brother's stuff or something. Fast forward again to about last year. My fiancé and I were walking around a St. Patrick's Day parade. We passed by one of those, like, palm reader fortune tellers. We live in a small town in Indiana. There's a few of those around where we live. So because my fiancé and I are skeptics, we decided to try it out. We've never had our fortunes told, and we both figured it would be fun. Right off the bat, she asks, "Did you guys have a miscarriage?" We both answered no. And she says to us while looking at me, "I thought I'd ask. I saw a boy with you when you walked by. He's not harmful, he's happy, but he's been with you for a while." Later that night, my fiancé reminded me about when I told her about the kid I saw from my childhood, and she wondered if it could probably be him. I originally brushed it off and joked that maybe he grew up to be Slender Man or something. But who knows? I'm still waiting for him to give my shirt back, though. I think I have something following me. I'll start with my earliest memory of something unexplainable. To start it off, though, I used to consider myself an open-minded skeptic, watching ghost hunters growing up just to laugh and fairly easily debunk their encounters. What interested me was my lack of notable experiences, but the last 10 or so years have started to convince me otherwise. 2005 to 2006-ish, my sister and I would stay the weekends at my dad's house. Important note, there was only 3 of us in the house at the time. The living room was next to the kitchen, with 2 open doorways that connected them. In the kitchen was a set of double doors that led to my dad's room. These doors made the most horrendous noise at the hinges that could be heard throughout the house. The 3 of us were watching movies in the living room, and around midnight, my dad went to bed. My sister was asleep on the couch, and I was on the floor. Suddenly, there were footsteps in the kitchen. I could feel the vibrations caused by the heavy footfalls on the floor. My dad was in his room, my sister still on the couch. This continued for 2 to 3 minutes, just pacing back and forth. After it stopped, I decided I should get some sleep. This next one happened around 2011. I was in high school and living with my mom and stepdad. I would walk home after school every day, and my sister rode the bus from the elementary school. My mom and stepdad worked every day, so I was always the first one home. After a stressful day at school, I went straight to my room and landed on my bed. I just wanted to close my eyes for a bit and unwind. At the foot of my bed, I heard a very loud, deep breath, like a sigh, but it sounded forced. Needless to say, I shot up and looked around, but no one was there. I was the only one in the house. Later that year, I woke up in the middle of the night, wide awake, like I was being watched. I had this sense of dread come over me, and I looked around the room. My open closet door shut on its own. It didn't slam, but it had some force, enough to make it latch closed. The dreadful feeling went away, and I managed to go back to sleep. At this point, I was convinced there was something in the house, some kind of residual energy or something. One night, I was gaming with some friends. I was the only one awake when I got up to get a glass of water. I took my headset off and set it on the desk. When I got back, my friends were talking about who might have been in my room. They said they heard a woman's voice while I was gone. The house was old, so I assumed that's why these things were happening. After I moved into my first apartment with my girlfriend, I started having second thoughts about that. The building was still pretty new. As far as I knew, there were no deaths in the building. Our dog is very timid. He doesn't bark much and is scared of anything bigger than him. He wouldn't react to people moving around in the apartment building or even knocks on our door. One night, he was standing in the hallway, staring at the front door. This was out of character for him. I got worried once he started to bark at the door, despite no one being outside. I started to contemplate the idea that what this was attached to me somehow. I've read that people can be haunted in the same way that buildings or objects can. I was more serious about it when I heard the deep breath again, behind me, just like at my mom's house. A deep sigh sounded like it was forced. I spun around in my computer chair, and no one was there. These things never happened consistently. Maybe a few months apart, sometimes years. I was freaked out when I was touched one day. I was the only one at home when my hat was knocked off my head. right into my lap. Another time, my beanie was lifted right off my head, like it was being pinched from the top. Those are the only times I've been touched by it. After all of this, though, I've never felt threatened by it. I've never felt like I was in danger by what was happening. It was just creepy. Until last year. My job requires me to open on Sunday mornings. This usually meant I wake up at 4 a.m. and got to work by 5. St. Patrick's Day fell on a Saturday last year. We lived in a house split up into different apartments, and all the other tenants wanted to throw a big house party Saturday night to celebrate. I'm a pretty light sleeper, so instead of trying to sleep through a party, I wanted to go to work and sleep there. It was going well until about 11 that night. We have a lounge area upstairs. It has some couches and recliners. This lounge area has a sort of overlook above the main lobby of the building with handrails. You can see part of the lobby below you. There are large window panes that look out the front of the building, too. They go from the floor all the way to the ceiling. At night, it's too dark to see that far through the windows. Only what the spotlights shine on. I was having trouble sleeping on one of these couches. I was having a sense of unease, almost like I wasn't alone. I kept hearing noises in the walls, but I assumed those were just pipes banging around. Then I heard a door close downstairs. When I opened my eyes, there was a bright flash that reflected off of the windows and lit up the lobby downstairs. I sat and waited for a bit before closing my eyes again. That's when I felt it. It wasn't like before. All of my experiences before were different. This one felt almost sinister. I never had the feeling to run as much as I did then. I had the sense that someone was in front of me, almost like a change in air pressure. I immediately got up and ran downstairs. I felt like it followed me. I had the sense of urgency, like I was being threatened. I don't know how else to describe it. I got in my car and hauled ass back home. I haven't experienced anything like that since. I'm not sure that I want to. It's probably important to note that maybe 100 yards away from the building is an old graveyard. The headstones date mid to late 1800s. It's tucked back into some trees, but in the winter, when the trees are dead, you can see it. It always feels kind of eerie around there. Thank you for listening. This is the first time I have written these out and shared them. This stuff feels like it's been escalating, and I'm very curious about it. I want to look into it more, but I'm not sure how to go about doing that. I would love to hear some thoughts about what it could be. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.